It is time for us to meet in the field, to roar in one voice, not compete with each other, but work with each other. It is time for us to unite again. It is time for us not to only meet with each other and talk about the horror, and it is horror in women's lives, from the rape statistics to the violence to all kinds of things, but rather strategize and talk about how we can change and penetrate through new mediums where we can create the change. It is time for us to break our silence. You know, when it comes to silence, we think it's only the third world women who are raped or killed or domestically violated. Every American woman has her story as well. And every American woman and a European woman and a Norwegian woman and an Iraqi woman and Congolese woman have to also break her silence. We won't change if we're going to die in our silence again, as my grandmother had and as my mother had. It is time to break our silence and to speak out and to speak up. It is time for us to lead to that change. So if you're not in the field yet, and I doubt that, join me in the field. Let us make, it is time for us to make this field a much, much bigger place. Thank you, and I hope we have a chance to have much questions and answers. This is always a sensitive part. I'm hoping that you asked me a lot more than I spoke about.
Hi, I want to say thank you so much for being here. This is an inspiration to me. And I wanted to, you focused a lot on changing everything, which I'm completely on board with you. I went to a women's college, I have really radical ideas, but now I'm studying international affairs at Georgia Tech. And so I feel like I'm the only feminist in my class. And I feel like I'm constantly trying to strengthen my debate, which is a good thing to do. But it's almost like I'm trying to learn the language of patriarchy or of some of the men in my class, so then I can have a stronger debate. So I wanted to ask you, I think having a good debate comes from understanding the strength of the structures, some of the structures that are already in existence. So if you could speak to some of the movements and things that are going on, I guess, in the mainstream that you think could be going in a good direction and that we can encourage those also, if that makes any sense.
Sure, and I can only answer you from my experience and my limited experience in war zones, but I think of wars as a microscope of life. It really shows the same aspect, it's just more severe and more concentrated time period. Because it's the same thing. You know, I mean, I think this time is amazing time because there are people who are thinking about values and ethics and the role of the markets vis-a-vis the people and capitalism and all of these things. There's a discussion, there's an open discussion, what do we do? But the people who are deciding how do we restructure it are the same people. And we are still excluded from the discussion. There is now, for the first time, a discussion coming from, data from financial institutions such as Goldman Sachs and McKinsey and Ernst & Young and yada, yada, who are saying we cannot do it. But the boardroom discussion is still the same, networks of how do we restructure that in the same old thinking. And I think I could only tell you about how we change it at Women for Women. The voices of women, we know, is marginalized. I just, I don't feel like talking about how horrible it is for women with this audience. You know it. It is marginalized. And when women get asked, we are mostly asked about women and children. And I'm one of those people who are tired of that. It's like, why do you think I don't have an opinion about the political structure or the financial structure or whatever? And I'm particularly, again, talking about, poor countries and war zones. Well, one of the things that we did is change that discussion. So we started surveying, for example, the reality of what women in conflict areas, to ask them not about their realities, though that's one part of the questions, but to ask them what they think about the invasion of Iraq, the constitution of Iraq, the coming up election. What do they think about this party vis-a-vis this party? What about the war in Congo? Who is raping? Who is doing that? What are the solutions they have? And that data automatically, because before I used to talk about it, you've got to hear what's going on to women. And now when I meet the politicians in these countries, or global politicians actually, and I say, these are data that is coming about Iraq on what's happening in Iraq's politics, or about Congo or whatever. The politician immediately step back and women become constituents, not, poor little things sitting on the margin and I just need one woman representative and check the box and I will be okay. I'll be a cool guy. And so it becomes interesting no, I need to know what they're saying because they are important. We learned that from a men's training program that we did in Congo, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and Nigeria, where we teach men about women's rights in leadership positions. And we say, if you want to be a good leader, you really need to understand what women are saying in your society. And so usually they say, oh, okay, yeah, I need to be a good leader. It's a selfish attitude. It's not a altruistic perspective. And yet we come and teach that guy about rape and violence and economic contributions and health and education and all these things. And the switch in their attitude vis-a-vis women is huge, huge. Not for moral reasons, although it evolves to moral reasons, but for pragmatic reasons. I was giving an example in a discussion earlier about a military commander in Congo who said, before I entered this program, every time I had a gun and I entered another man's house, I never thought twice about raping his wife. I always raped his wife until I learned that I could get HIV and that I could die and I could kill my family and half of my soldiers could die. And the loss is too big. So I stopped raping, and I punish any soldier to rape because I don't want my soldiers to die. Now, you may think it's a very cold-blooded argument. This guy has no moral discussion in here. I just don't want to get HIV. A year later, I met with him, and he talked about how he saved money with his wife and how their lifestyle improved because now they saved money together, and how he's now much happier, and now he spends his private time with his wife, roaming around the neighborhood to show everyone how happy he is. So it evolved. The pragmatic, very cold argument did indeed evolve to a moral argument. And I think it's a long way to go about your question. First of all, this is the change that we need to make. We can't have just one woman representing all women. It's not good enough. It's just not good enough. We talk about the United States right now. We do have good representation of women, but not good enough. We still have a long way to go. We still want more representation in the administration, in the Congress, in the Senate of women. We are having discussion and negotiations with the Taliban. Not one woman are in these negotiating tables. And you want to scream and say, where are the Afghan women? How could you have negotiations with the Taliban again? It is these Afghan women who are going to hold everyone accountable. And so first, it's not enough, and we cannot be shy about saying, no, it's not enough to have one woman or two women. Second, yes, volume helps. You have 10 women with you in the class, helps you much more pushing the debate than when you're only one. And the same if you have one in the Senate versus 10 women in the Senate. But until that happens, we just need to speak out.